want to focus on the most urgent issues from my perspective. I want to talk more about your thoughts on Israel and Israel's security. I want to talk about Afghanistan, and I want to talk about personnel issues. So on Israel, obviously our relationship with Israel is tremendously important in Israel, and we are fundamentally tied to them because of being such a strong democracy in the Middle East and having our national securities very much being tied in many ways. We talked quite a bit about Iran, and you've clarified your position that containment is not an option. I'm concerned about a statement you said with regard to Iran. A nuclear Iran is an existential threat to the United States as well as Israel. The Iranian government has been responsible for the deaths of U.S. service members, an attempted attack on U.S. soil, the funding, training of terrorist groups. Their latest in a long list of direct threats to Israel came just today. So I want to make sure that in your statement earlier today, with regard to whether Iran is legitimate, I can understand if you meant it's a legal entity that has international relations and has diplomatic relations and is a member of the UN, but I do not see Iran or the Iranian government as a legitimate government, and I'd like your thoughts on that.
You've explained this a bit. You said the Jewish lobby intimidates a lot of people up here. I'm not an Israeli senator. I'm a United States senator. This pressure makes us do dumb things at times. You said the Jewish lobby should not have been, that term shouldn't have been used. It should have been some other term. Name one person, in your opinion, who's intimidated by the Israeli lobby in the United States Senate. You said back then it makes us do dumb things. You can't name one senator intimidated. Now give me one example of the dumb things that we're pressured to do up here. Now let me ask you this about the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. You said just a minute ago you think they're a terrorist organization. You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And you voted against the amendment designating them a terrorist organization because you thought we'd be going down the wrong road by doing that because they're a recognized state.
Mujahideen al-Khalq, MEK, is a terrorist group. Now, why do I say that? Well, they're on the State Department list of terrorist groups. Now, how did they get there? Well, pretty easy. They killed U.S. civilians. In fact, let me show you all the things that MEK has done. Like I said, State Department's terrorist organization list. They assisted several U.S. I'm sorry, they did not assist. They assassinated several U.S. military personnel and U.S. civilians working on defense projects in Tehran. That'll get you on a terrorist list. Oh, right, they also participated in the Iran hostage-taking. Well, that was pretty bad. You know, that was a pretty significant blow to the country. And then, oh, right, worked with Saddam. They worked with Saddam Hussein. I mean, if that doesn't get you on a terrorist watch list, I don't know what else does. I mean, you kill Americans, you take Americans hostage in one of the most critical foreign policy events of our lifetimes, and you work with Saddam. Come on, over, right? So what's happening now? Well, all of Washington has decided, no, we're making money from those guys, and we like those guys. So we'd like to take them off the terrorist list. In fact, not only are we going to lobby for that, but we're going to take tens of thousands of dollars in speaking engagement fees from those guys in order to lobby the Obama administration to take them off the list.
I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes about Israel. Israel is, I believe, America's most important ally, certainly in the Middle East and in many respects in the entire world. A lot of people in this body are concerned, quite appropriately, about making sure that that alliance remains strong, about making sure that our interests as Americans are protected abroad. And a lot of us feel like one of the best ways of protecting American national security is through that alliance in the Middle East. On April 12th, 2002, there was a Palestinian terrorist who detonated a bomb in downtown Jerusalem, killing 6 Israelis and wounding, I believe, about 100 others. On that day, while you were still serving the U.S. Senate, you gave a speech on the Senate floor, made a couple of comments that I'd like to discuss with you and ask you a little bit about. In one segment of the speech, you said, "We understand Israel's right to defend itself. We're committed to that. We've helped Israel defend that right. We will continue to do so, but it should not be at the expense of the Palestinian people, innocent Palestinian people and innocent Israelis who are paying a high price. Some who have read that have reacted with concern that this may be indicative of a feeling on your part that there might be some moral equivalency between, on the one hand, Israel's exercise of its right to defend itself, and on the other hand, Palestinian terrorism. Do you believe that there is a moral equivalency between these two things? But is their grievance legitimate?
The Palestinians?
Yeah, the Palestinians who decide to strap a bomb onto themselves and detonate it or otherwise engage in acts of terror. Do they have a legitimate grievance that they're expressing?
Well, they have grievances.
Are those
a lot of
grievances
people have
legitimate?
grievances, but not a justification for terrorism and killing innocent people. Never.
Are they on par with the grievances that innocent Israelis have when they become the victims of violent acts?
And so the first question I think we have to ask ourselves is, was there a war in Gaza? And that's actually an important question, because Israel justified the death and destruction in Gaza by saying that it confronted, and now I'm using its phrase, an asymmetric war in Gaza. It is very dangerous for Israel to believe it won the war when there was no war. In reality, not a single battle was fought during the 22 days of fighting. If there was no war in Gaza, what did happen? It's fairly clear what happened militarily. Israel flew about 3,000 combat missions over Gaza. Every plane came back. None was downed. None was even damaged. That's not too surprising, because Hamas had no anti-aircraft defenses. We have the very clear testimony of probably the best possible witnesses, namely the Israeli soldiers themselves. Many Israeli soldiers testified to what they experienced. So let me quote them. Soldier, there was nothing there. Ghost towns. Except for some livestock, nothing moved. Soldier, there was supposed to be a tiny resistance force upon entry, but there just wasn't. No soldiers, no enemy in the field, no engagement, no battles. The soldiers who are interviewed keep using the word insane. Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. One soldier said, "This was firepower such as I had never known. There were blasts all the time." Another soldier said, "You feel like a child playing around with a magnifying glass, burning up ants." Israel dropped white phosphorus on Gaza. I'm not sure how many of you know much about it. It reaches a temperature of 800 degrees Celsius, 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. What did Israel do with the white phosphorus? Human Rights Watch wrote a report called Rain of Fire. It said that Israel repeatedly exploded white phosphorus munitions in the air over populated areas, killing and injuring civilians and damaging civilian structures. They dropped the white phosphorus on a school, a market, a humanitarian aid warehouse. They dropped it on Al-Quds Hospital. They dropped it on Al-Wafa Hospital. The hospitals, said Human Rights Watch, were clearly marked, and there does not appear to have been fighting in that immediate area. 1,400 Palestinians were killed, of whom up to 4/5 were civilians. 358 were children. 13 Israelis were killed, of whom 10 were combatants, and half of the combatants were killed inadvertently by other Israeli soldiers, friendly fire. Those are not the statistics of a war. Those are the statistics of a massacre.
Animals?
I want to make sure that everybody in this chamber understands it's not just about the security of Israel. The Iranian nuclear threat is a much bigger one. It is very clear that if Iran gets nuclear weapons, that other nations will start to do the same thing, and that would cut completely counter to, I know, principles that you hold, principles the President holds. It's not just on Israel's shoulders to be worried about a nuclear Iran. It is a threat that we all need to worry about.
In 2006, when Israel was responding to attacks by Hezbollah from Lebanon, you called that response a, quote, sickening slaughter, close quote, and you accused Israel of, quote, the systematic destruction of an American friend, the country and people of Lebanon, close quote. What do you say about those quotes today? In 2008, you wrote that a nuclear Iran might be tolerable because, quote, sovereign nation states possessing nuclear weapons capability, as opposed to stateless terrorist groups, will often respond with some degree of responsible or at least sane behavior, close quote. Is that still your hope or expectation about this government of Iran?
You made one statement that I strongly disagreed with. You said that President Obama has been the strongest ally of Israel, or no, Israeli supporter since 1948. I have a hard time with that.
You would have thought that it was appropriate for us to have direct, unconditional talks with Iran, because here we have a regime that doesn't respond in a responsible or sane behavior as a state sponsor of terrorism.
New revelations have emerged that the Bush administration secretly trained an Iranian opposition group despite its inclusion on the State Department's list of foreign terrorists. Writing for the New Yorker magazine, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh reports U.S. Joint Special Operations Command trained operatives from Mujahideen-e-Khalq, or MEK, at a secret site in Nevada beginning in 2005. According to Hersh, MEK members were trained in intercepting communications, cryptography, weaponry, and small unit tactics at the Nevada site up until President Obama took office. The MEK has been included on the State Department's list of foreign terrorist groups since 1997. It's been linked to a number of attacks spanning from the murders of 6 U.S. citizens in the 70s to the recent wave of assassinations targeting Iranian nuclear scientists. Although the revelation that the U.S. government directly trained the MEK comes as a surprise, it's no secret the group has prominent backers across the political spectrum.
Assassinations done by the MEK, and let me make it clear, the MEK has been in a virtual war with the mullahs in Iran since the fall of the Shah. And you don't have to urge them to kill anybody. They're very eager to do it themselves. But I'm a little amazed that more reporters aren't asking more questions about this, because it seems to be so egregious. This is right now, our Treasury Department is actually asking questions, because no matter how you cut it, it's a terrorist group. And if you're aiding and supporting a terrorist group under the law of the United States, as you know, there's been some prosecutions in this area of people of Middle East descent supporting groups that we consider to be terrorists, and they get put away in jail. There certainly seems to be a double standard here at work.
We're dealing with a regime that is the largest state sponsor of terrorism. And given the fact that they have a long history, including in Iraq, with assisting the militias to murder our troops, including what they've done with Hezbollah and Hamas, what they're doing now in Syria. So I think there's always a distinction in how we deal with different players around the world.
Always pro-Israel, and I think that's been the mainstream of our views. I've seen a number of times, in fairness to you, where you've said you're pro-Israel, but that doesn't mean you have to be reflexively for everything that Israel is for.
that position, you think sanctions against Iran are a good policy today?
I have said on the record, multilateral international sanctions.
Do you agree with
effect.
sanctions against Iran?
I'm sorry?
Do you think sanctions against Iran are a good idea today?
Yes, yes.
That the U.S. has, quote, tilted too far towards Israel in the Middle East peace process. But I think your record and your past statements as a United States Senator demonstrate greater antagonism for the nation of Israel than any member of this body.